Hello, I am the plant-based pâtissière, and today we're going to be making these beautiful coconut macaroons. First, we're going to start out with 1/3 cup of maple syrup, the good stuff, and then we're going to measure an additional tablespoon when we put it in the pot. You may be wondering why I'm using this particular type of measuring cup. It is a dry measuring cup, usually used for things like flour, which are, well, dry powders, not liquids. Really, it doesn't matter. I am comfortable enough using that measuring cup to not spill the maple syrup because, well, it's pretty thick, it doesn't spill very easily, and I did not spill any pouring it into this pot. I've actually had several people insist that a dry measuring cup somehow is less than a wet or liquid measuring cup. Just to clarify, a cup is a cup. The reason the liquid measuring cups exist, and you'll see this when I add my next ingredient, is just to make it easier to pour and not spill things all over the place. You can use a dry cup, it's not less, it's the same amount. You may be able to see some little bubbles forming in the maple syrup. That's good, it's just at a nice light simmer. So we're going to add our next ingredient coconut milk, full fat. Some new bakers are a little unnerved by the chunks that can appear in coconut milk. It is completely normal. I measured out half a cup into my wet measuring cup because it actually has a 1/2 line that I can use as a reference, and as you can see, the spout nicely guides it into the pot. My metal whisk is not the most pleasant sound, so apologies for the world's worst ASMR. However, we do need to get this nice and incorporated, so we're going to just mix it on occasion as the liquid simmers. It needs to simmer and not burn on the bottom, which is why it's important to occasionally whisk it. You don't need to whisk the whole time. You can wait a couple seconds between it, it'll be just fine. As you can see, when I leave it alone, some bubbles form and then it just whisks away nicely. I usually wait a bit until the bubbles form to whisk again, just making sure it doesn't burn, and we should be good. I like you, and we have more important steps to get to, so I'm not going to make you watch me whisk for 3 minutes. Let's just skip to removing it from the heat. Welcome to my slightly dirtier side of the stove. Coconut macaroons need coconut, obviously, so let's do 1.5 cups of coconut and just mix that all up together. My apologies, I am right handed and I kind of forgot how video angles work for a second, so you're going to be seeing a lot of my arm as I mix these. Hopefully, you can still see the coconut macaroons enough to understand what I'm doing. Mixing is not exactly a difficult concept. I actually really like coconut macaroons as a beginner dessert because they're so forgiving. It's pretty hard to overmix at this stage. You're really just forming something that has structure to it. And you may notice mine is a little loose, but there's an easy fix for that. I am adding a 1/4 cup of coconut flour. I prefer coconut flour to keep the coconutty taste consistency. Almond flour and rice flour, however, are also going to work here. I wouldn't really use wheat flour or all purpose flour for this. It should be either a nut flour or a rice flour. All this flour is doing is adding some extra dryness. It helps soak up some of the liquid and provide some more structure. If I were to flavor the macaroons with matcha or cocoa powder, those are two really good options if you want to make it a bit more fun. I would also be adding them in here now. And now it is time we break out one of my absolute favorite kitchen utensils, the ice cream scooper. I just love the ice cream scooper for portioning. Now, these are very large. I have a pretty big ice cream scooper, so we're not going to use this for the final portion, but it's pretty good for eyeballing it. You'll notice I'm not filling the ice cream scoop all the way. I'm not patting it down too much or trying to provide a ton of structure, and that's because, like I said, this is not going to be our final measurement. We're actually going to be splitting these in half. I just want a vaguely even sized ball shape for all of these, so that when I split it in half, they will also be vaguely even ball shapes. In theory, the ice cream scoop could also keep your hands less messy. However, I'm just touching them with my hands anyways, so that's not really what we're going for here. But if you don't want your hands messy, you could use a spoon. Now let's just skip to the part where I'm breaking these in half and rolling them into tiny balls. As you can see, well, I'm breaking them in half and rolling them into tiny balls. Macaroons are not supposed to be that huge. If you make them that large, you're going to need to up your cook time in order to have them cooked all the way through, and you don't want them raw. That's just a little gross. I know I'm going to get this comment eventually, so I'm just going to address this now. Yes, I am touching the dessert with my bare hands. This is fine. I wash my hands very regularly when I bake in between most steps. I don't show it because half of this content would be me washing my hands, and that's not very interesting. It is entirely food safe to touch food with your hands as you're baking it. It's completely fine, don't worry about it, as long as you properly wash your hands. Many people think that gloves are more hygienic, but the truth is, gloves are really not all that hygienic depending on how you use them. If you don't regularly change your gloves and you touch your face or your hair or your phone, those hair, face, and phone germs are on the gloves. And since you think, oh, gloves are more sanitary, you may forget to change them after doing this. So I find hand washing just easier than changing my gloves 10 times every time I bake. I also remove all of my rings when I bake. You can see on my fingers I'm not wearing any. Usually I will have a ring on my right ring finger when I'm not baking. Yes, I'm wearing a fitness watch. It is not touching my food. None of the food is going above my wrist. Additionally, most bacteria that may be thriving on my body is not going to survive the oven, and that is where we're going to put these next for about 20 minutes. If they look a little anemic, keep them in for maybe 4 minutes. Just check every minute after you hit that 20 mark. Now we're going to melt some dark chocolate and use it for the bottom of the macaroons and a drizzle on top. For this, I will be using a very advanced technique known as microwave it and wait till it's melted. As you can see, the macaroons look a little golden brown on top. Some people prefer them a bit toastier if you're one of those people. Like I said, put them back for a couple more minutes, but for me, these are just fine. I have also waited for them to cool completely. It took maybe 10 minutes. I'm not really sure. I just kind of went on my phone and played Mahjong until I thought they were ready, and I touched them and they were cool. So I'm dipping the bottom of the macaroons into my bowl of melted chocolate, and I'm placing them back on the sheet upside down. This is so the chocolate does not harden against the parchment paper and makes it hard to remove. I have made this mistake before. Trust me, the upside down method is just less pain. You really don't need a ton of chocolate for this step, but you're going to need a bit more if you want to do a drizzle on top. And I think the drizzle on top just brings it all together and makes it look extra nice, so I'll be doing that. So, afterwards, we're going to put these in the refrigerator so the chocolate hardens up more. We're going to flip them back, and we're going to do a chocolate drizzle on top. It is back to the microwave. I added a little bit of coconut oil because that helps make chocolate a lot more thin. I added a bit too much and had to balance it out with a little more chocolate, which is always adjustable. Okay, I lied. The chocolate drizzle is my favorite part. It's just so fun. You can kind of go crazy with a spoon and just drizzle it all over. I really like how the thin strands look, and to do that, that's why we needed to thin that chocolate out. You can't even really taste the coconut oil in there. If you're worried about that flavor, you can always use vegetable shortening or a refined coconut oil instead. I typically use an unrefined coconut oil. It has a bit more of that coconut flavor. Refined coconut oil I would use if it's for an application like frying, or if I don't want the coconut flavor at all. Still, I don't think it's noticeable in the dark chocolate, and even if it is, these are coconut macaroons, and a little extra coconut is not going to hurt here. If you don't like coconut, you should not make these. It is all coconut. That is what it is. It's just a ball of coconut. I'm also just quickly going back over the ones I already did to kind of pretty them up and make them look nicer and a bit more even. But we are pretty much done. I hope you try this recipe and I hope you enjoy it a lot. Thank you for watching.